Okay, hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords. And let me just put my coffee over there. Today I'm here to tell you all about the newest discovery in SJW RPGs. It's very funny how I hear some of these guys trying to claim that, the OSR has nothing interesting to say, or how, some of them have claimed, well, the RPG Pundits never produced anything of note. I love how, I think it was Gareth Skarka who said that the RPG Pundit isn't a real game designer or something like that. And I had to point out that in the 7 years he hasn't, 8 years now, 9, I don't know, but in the incredibly long amount of time that he hasn't actually produced the Far West Kickstarter he was massively funded for, I've written 110 RPG products. So, quantity would not necessarily indicate quality, but the amount of people that love my games and enjoy them and play them, and the innovations that they have all pretty much spoken for themselves. But then you have these same people who try to pretend that this is not really interesting game design. You have to see what it is that they are praising instead, and that's where the whole thing becomes very interesting. Because just recently there has been a successful, I might add, Kickstarter. You have to make a note that it did actually fund. Because if it didn't fund, that would be one thing, right? That would mean, well, nobody was interested. But this was something that SJW's got behind and funded, which I think is their model for what in the grim future where they have absolute power. This would be the game, or the model of the game type that everybody would be forced to play. And this RPG I'm talking about is, of course, Fat Self-Care, the RPG. I swear, everything I'm going to tell you now is real, okay? Buckle up, buckaroos, because this is going to get very funny. And if you don't believe me, go look it up. They have it's on Kickstarter. It's now already done, but it's there, and you will see that I'm not joking. This isn't satire. I'm not kidding you. Okay, so what is Fat Self-Care, the RPG? Well, Fat Self-Care, the RPG is a game that was created. To be fair, I don't think they actually use the term RPG. It's been kind of promoted along TTRPG lines and materials, but I think that they don't even call it a story game. They call it a journaling game. But it's a role-playing game of sorts, in the same sense that story games are of sorts, involve a certain type of role playing. You're in theory playing a role. It's just that the role you're playing in Fat Self-Care is a morbidly obese person. Of course, they never use that term, right? They say a fat person. And the Fat Self-Care, the RPG, first of all, I should, just to give you a breakdown of the product, it's a 24-page book that I believe the one with the nice cover, it costs $25 for a 24-page book. I'll point out that my own products are much more inexpensive in terms of both the artistic quality to the price and the page count per dollar. But anyway, the Fat Self-Care book is a game where you like any game, the first thing you get is character creation. And as the description of the game makes it clear, the most important choice you have when creating a character is gender. You can play any gender that you want. You're allowed to be whatever gender, and the entire book has been set up so that theoretically the gender of the person won't matter, which kind of makes the choice not matter either, doesn't it? But there you are. The important thing is you can claim that your character is the gender of your choice. After that, everything else is pretty much decided for you. Your character's central characteristic is that they are fat. Not just fat, but clearly very fat. That is implicit in the context of what is written. And the idea of felt self-care is that you are playing through a series of scenarios. The first thing you need to know beyond that is that it is a solo game. And I think it's very clear the reasons why a solo game would be appealing. First, you don't need to have other people to play it with. Second, you don't need a DM to play it. It's not a solo game in the sense that, Scarlet Heroes is a solo game that requires just one GM and one player. It's not even that. And I have certain criticisms about the viability of that. But this is not that. It just has one person, and that person is the player. And this gets rid of the nasty middleman known as the DM. So, DMs can be abolished. And it makes sure that there won't be any DM either, wrecking the experience by changing the will of the game designer, who knows all, or by, in some way, involving inappropriate thoughts and ideas into the game or being allowed to modify the game in any way. So, one person only playing, right? That's very important. Second, your character is always going through, the span of the game is your character going through a day. And during the course of the day, they can pick one or more of what the Kickstarter indicates will be at least 20. I mean, the basic game is intended to have 20 scenarios of the day of this fat person of indeterminate gender that you are playing. So all of the scenarios are based around the concept of fat self-care. Now, what is fat self-care? We ask ourselves. Is this a fat person realizing that they probably need to take better care of themselves and therefore, trying to change some of the habits that have maybe led them to their current situation? There's also a lot implied kind of in at least in the examples that are provided in the material related to this game, that would indicate this isn't just a fat person, but probably a fat person that doesn't have a job, So you kind of wonder where this person's life is at. It does implicitly suggest they have a lover, also of indeterminate gender, which, that certainly could be true. Lots of fat people of all varieties of levels of obesity have lovers. But if you were to read this with a critical eye, you would look at this and say, this is a person that's probably got some serious problems. And at no point do any of the scenarios seem to suggest that those problems should be addressed or that any change is required. On the contrary, fat self-care is it's definitely not about them going out and getting a diet or doing some exercise or trying to change their weight or trying to change their perspective so that they can actually get better and therefore then proceed to actually feel better. Instead, fat self-care is the SJW concept of the term, which is that you're fat and therefore you are going to do things to make yourself feel better about being fat and refuse to change in any way, because why should you have to change? Because whatever you choose to be is already perfect and therefore you require no change. And anyone who says you require change is a bigot. Okay? So the scenarios are examples of things like, one of them is you go out for breakfast to your favorite diner, and it has a description of what you're doing in the diner. And then the critical part, the part that you're allowed to do something about it, is in the form of certain questions that you then have to imagine the answer to in your own mind. So, for example, at the diner, you decide to splurge on the most extravagant, sumptuous dish that you could want there. And what would that dish be? And what would it be like? And how would you really enjoy it? And therefore feel less bad about your massive obesity. And then it continues with more text that will tell you things, right? And then maybe another question. And there are other scenarios, like one of them is enjoying a much-needed nap, right? Because, when you're obese, possibly unemployed, and you're not too sure about what type of lover you have, then, the thing you should do is go back in bed and sleep more, This is obviously also in terms of, strict analysis of game mechanics. The mechanic of the game is basically you get to think about certain details that don't matter at all. You make no important choices. You can't change the scenario or change the outcomes of the scenarios. You can pick which scenarios you engage with or not. That's true. But you can't actually decide to do anything contrary to what is already being dictated to you as the correct way to behave. And the correct way to behave is the way that fits the ideology of the game designer. And that is the model, I think, that SJWs are going to want all RPGs to eventually become, so that RPGs will stop being something that can potentially fester independent thought and therefore opposition to the SJW agenda. And that, in a nutshell, is basically fat self-care. It's really unbelievable to think that this got funded, but it did. It got, I think 181 people bought into it. So, discounting the author, possibly the author themselves or their immediate friends and family. There were some people that actually put serious money into this, mostly so that they could then do Twitter posts about how they've supported this. And will this ever be used by anyone? I doubt it. Maybe, given that practically playing this game just means reading some of it, maybe some people will read some of it and therefore technically have played if they even stop to think about what questions, about the questions that are the only thing that you're allowed to do with your character. Maybe that might happen, but is that really role playing at all? I wouldn't say it is. Except in the sense that maybe you're playing the role of an obese person. I suspect a lot of the people who buy this book will be acting as themselves in it. It is especially ironic that in the section about possible risks to people who are backers, is that the author of this game apparently has serious health problems, which one must assume are related to obesity. And therefore, if those take a turn for the worse, the game might be delayed or worse. You can't, this stuff writes itself. You couldn't make this stuff up. I could not have come up with this and said, no, nobody is going to believe this. Like that. I'd never have thought that we would have gotten here, but yet here we are. And that's the thing. And so I just wanted to tell you guys all about Fat Self-Care, the RPG. In case you ever, watch some of my other videos, think, no, Pundit is exaggerating about what these guys do and what they like and what they want, right? Well, here's the proof, right? There you have it. And while that's mostly it, I guess there's one more point to add here that relates to kind of the larger motive of posting this, which is that it's very likely if there are any comments about this video from the SJW crowd, they're going to say, "Oh, how dare Pundit be so mean to the game designer and to fat people and stuff like that." I'm not mean to fat people. I'm criticizing the glorification of obesity as if it was equal in every way to not being obese, right? That is like I criticize everything that is based on a complete and willful suspension of reality for the sake of ideology, right? And for the sake of pushing an agenda that is fundamentally meant to harm the people involved, to harm society, and to harm our civilization as a whole. But that's not what I wanted to really say. What I wanted to say is that some of these people are going to attack me basically for being mean. I'm very used to that because generally there's only two types of attacks SJWs have made against me. One are lies, when they claim things that are patently untrue, like that the RPG Pundit is a racist or a transphobe or a misogynist or stuff like that, or go into more extreme details of this of the same, sometimes with things that they've completely pulled out of their ass and have no relationship to truth. Or the one thing that could arguably be true is that I'm mean. But the reason they hate my meanness is really because I am able to be mean. And you would think maybe, a society where no one's allowed to be mean would be great, wouldn't it? Except it really wouldn't, because the way that I'm allowed to be mean is because I don't owe anyone anything, because I am my own person, because I have multiple streams of income, because I have no interest in living off public money or becoming, a public employee or something like that. And therefore, I cannot be controlled. The SJWs don't want people to not be mean because they don't like being mean. They prove that they love being mean. They like being mean all the time, right? The same people that say, oh, the RPG pundit is mean, have also said, wouldn't it be great if we could just kill all men? And stuff like that, right? Have often suggested that violence is the answer to things. Have often been intentionally, aggressively mocking people they don't like, insulting those people, trying to hurt things that those people through things that they like for no reason other than that they want to hurt them. So they have it's not that they treasure niceness or even that they hate meanness. It's that if people that they don't like aren't allowed to be mean, then they have control. So yes, maybe I'm being mean. That's because I am a free person and you don't get to control me, right? And that is an essentially good thing for the sake of the freedom of our society. You don't get to, because you don't get to then tell lies, to make up fantasies, and to deny reality and force everyone else to pretend that we have to accept that it's true. I guess that's everything I wanted to say for today. This video is not going to be quite as long as some of my recent ones, but that's okay. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video anywhere you like, anywhere you think people will find it interesting to learn about the Fat Self-Care RPG. Or anywhere you think people will be pissed off by it too, if you like, that's fine. You are also free people. And if you do want to support me, speaking of multiple streams of income, you could just, send me money via Patreon or PayPal, and there are links in the description for those. And I'm always very grateful when you do. I've actually had a bit of a boost of Patreon people recently, which I have to think are either people who like the cut of my jib but don't play RPGs, or who have bought every product I have and still want to keep supporting me. And so thank you so much if that's the case, right? But if you want to support me, and you haven't bought every product I have, or any product I have, and you want to get something for yourself, then one great way to support me is to pick up my games, right? If you want to check out my RPGs and setting books like Dark Albion, my supplements like Cults of Chaos, where you can create evil sects that you can use in just about any fantasy game, but especially with a medieval authentic style to them. The Old School Companion, that's full of material, rules, random tables, new magic, creatures, and lots of other stuff that are all from medieval authentic sources that you can add to your fantasy game. My other games like Star Adventure and Lion and Dragon, Arrows of Indra. Or if you can't, they're all much better price value than Fat Self-Care. I promise you that. But if you can't quite afford those games, and none of these games are over $30, I think, and some of them are, quite a lot less. Star Adventure is $9.99. But if you and it's more pages than Fat Self-Care. But if you can't afford that, but you can afford a little less, and you want to support me anyways, check out the RPG Pundit Presents series. And if you haven't checked out, check it out anyways. Even if you can afford and will buy the other books, because there's 104 issues of that now, and the latest one is brand new. RPG Pundit Presents number 104. More Medieval Authentic Secret Societies, contains a number of secret societies that you can use in any of your games. Again, they're all inspired by or based on actual, medieval culture and some actual medieval secret groups and things like that. But if that doesn't sound interesting to you, you get the Fantastic Robot Generator, or, Mutant Hordes, or any number of other products, adventures, there's supplements, there's location books, city books, and things like that. All kinds of things that all of them are between 99 cents and $4.99. And so when you're buying one of those, you're buying me a coffee, but you're also getting something in return. And I always appreciate it. But it's a great way to encourage me to keep going with these videos and with my gaming material. and keep producing stuff that people that don't want to buy fat self-care will probably be more interested in. I guess that's everything for today. Currently smoking. This is a Near Up Acorn with Image, Virginia.